All right. Hey there, folks. Since book tour and conventions are still on a somewhat staggered return, I figured I'd bring book tour to you. So welcome to Russ's Rockin' Rollercoaster, Season 6, intriguing interviews with creative minds. Well, crime and mystery fiction has multiple layers, nuances, and iterations. So I'm always excited to talk to former law enforcement professionals, say that 3 times fast, who made the switch to fiction. So please join me in welcoming tonight's guest, Micki Browning, an award-winning author who writes the Murr Cavallo and Joe Wyatt mysteries. Micki was also a graduate of the FBI National Academy, hostage negotiator, trained SWAT administrator, and coordinated the Citizens Police Academy. Welcome, Micki.
Thank you, Russ. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Just a heads up to the folks at home. Feel free to send me or Micki questions you have in the chat box during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. All right, Micki, as we always do, we'll start at the beginning. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I was born in Philly, but I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in California in the 80s. So I am truly somewhat abashedly a Valley girl.
A Valley girl. Wow.
Yeah.
You're my first Valley girl on the show. So how old were you when you actually moved to California?
I was in 2nd grade when I moved out there. My dad got transferred, and so we went from one coast to the other, and then knocked around.
Why did what was his job?
He worked for Litton, and it was a job transfer, and so I think he was tired of the weather, and I think he was pushing for it, and an opening came up, and so there we were.
I guess there's only so many times you can hear about Rocky before you've had enough.
Yeah, there's some truth to that.
There you go, right? So do you have any memories of Philly, or is it just kind of, were you too young, really?
You know, I was born in a Philly hospital. I lived out in Bucks County, and so really my memories of Philly had to do with school field trips, seeing the Liberty Bell, that sort of thing. Right. I certainly didn't. I wasn't old enough to really fall in love with the Philly cheesesteaks and that sort of thing, but you know, it's fun to go back and see it. So
did your parents bring, so even when you moved to California, was it one of those situations where they kind of brought the Philly with them, or could they just leave it behind?
You know, it was a little bit of a culture shock, particularly for my older sister. She was in 5th grade and I was in 2nd grade at the time. And, you know, we still said water, we still said orange. And my sister wore bobby socks to school. And in California, you know, already in 5th grade, you know, they were fashionistas and things like that. So it took a little bit to get used to, but you know, we were kids, we adapted pretty quick. I think it took a little longer for the folks.
So was it just it was you and you have one sister? And
I have a younger brother as well. So, but he started school there, so you know,
another middle child. Oh boy.
Yep.
Oh boy.
That's why
so I have to ask you, did you have the big poofy hair and the earrings and did you have a Benetton sweatshirt?
Oh gosh, of course I did.
Of course you did.
At some point, you know, I mean, of course.
Like for sure.
Totally. Oh my God.
That's great. So tell me about, so what was that like? I mean, you know, I've spent a bunch of time out in California. I'm an East Coast guy, but I've spent some time out in California. I know a lot of folks out there, but, you know, clearly that time, you know, being, you know, an 80s teenager myself, you know, you have very distinct memories of that time in the world. What was it like to kind of come of age in the 80s in the Valley?
Oh my gosh. Well, you recognize the places that were in the movies. And you certainly identified with them more. You could choose some of the characters and point at them and go, oh, you know, that's Marcy, or, you know, someone else that's at the school that you attended. You know, even in elementary school, at the elementary school, she was in 5th grade, I think, and I was in 2nd at the time, but it was one of the gals from the Brady Bunch. And then Christopher Knight, who was also on it, he lived in the neighborhood. Christy McNichol was friends with a person down the street. So, I mean, you just got used to being around all of these people, and you quickly realize that, they were just people like us. So it kind of, in some ways, it demystified who they were and what they were doing. And so, even as a kid, I became kind of blasé about things like that. But, and then I turned into an athlete. So a lot of that stuff just went the wayside. I didn't really care about it.
Okay, so that's interesting. So talk to me about that. So you're in the 80s, you're in California in the height of a very strange sort of, cultural shift, the Reagan years, and kind of an odd time in the world. So you got into what kind of sports did you play? What was your thing?
I was a swimmer. And later in life, I got into some other sports, but I was a swimmer first and started AAU when they had AAU teams. And then in high school, I did that, and I played water polo, but they didn't have a girls team. So I played on the boys team. I was one of 3 girls in the entire league. So that was a lot of fun. Guys didn't know. In water polo, you kind of guard off the chest, and so guys were like,
not going there.
Which was great because the 3 girls that were in the league, we took advantage of that. But the unfortunate thing was our swimsuits had the X back, the Speedos, and so when they were swimming, they could swoop down our back, grab that, and pull us back, and so it's kind of like soccer. There's a lot of shenanigans that go on that the refs don't see.
So during that time, so you were a swimmer, but what else were you into? Like, what was your thing back then?
I was one of those people that kind of went between the cliques. I got along with everybody because I was an A student, so I was with Brainiacs. I was an athlete because I was a sprinter. I was on the water polo team. A lot of my friends were in the stoner group, the divers mostly. So, I mean, I got a little bit of everything. And I think that was really helpful, not only for becoming a cop, because you learn how to talk to people. If you can't talk to a big cross section of the community, you're not effective as a police officer. So, having that, not belonging to necessarily any one, but being able to flip between them was really, really helpful. And I think it helps with writing too.
For sure. So let's just say you were kind of an all-around kid, teenager back then. Were you, you became a writer, but were you a reader back then?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What was your thing?
We didn't have a lot of money. Dad left the family pretty early in life after getting to California. I think it was a jump, and then he decided to jump again, only we stayed in one area. And so there wasn't a lot of money, but we had libraries that were close. And so even today, I am just a huge proponent of libraries. I think they're, one of the best things that we have going in this country, because they help on so many different levels. But I think with the reading, I started out like a lot of young girls, and that was with Nancy Drew. I read some of the Hardy Boys as well. I quickly kind of leveled up. I was kind of precocious. And so, I think I was 11 when I read my first Sidney Sheldon and went, wow, okay. And then, after that, everything just opened up, and I got into, some of the classics, and I love fantasy, although I've never written it, but Tolkien, and of course that then opened up all of the mythology, and so I do judge books by their covers, and if it looks interesting, it doesn't matter what the genre is, I would grab it and read it.
Were your friends readers too?
A lot of them were, and I think that probably helped as well. And it helped that my mother was really encouraging of it. It's like, there wasn't, like I said, a lot of extra money, but like I got the chicken pox in ninth grade. Not a good time to get them, but she came home. She had bought me this book called Sacagawea. And she bought it because it was the biggest book she could find. It was, it was.
That was going to take you a while.
Yeah. Anna Lee Walden, I believe the author's name was. And, so we grew up not wanting for anything. And it just, and like I said, she would encourage us to read anything.
Okay. Cool. So let me ask you this. So I'm going to just sort of jump ahead a little bit because I have a lot of questions I want to ask.
Okay.
So you're a Philly transfer come Valley girl / athlete, all around gal. How does someone like that become a cop? Like what was the path there? Talk to me about
Okay. A couple of things come to mind. One, it was process of elimination, and the other was honest to God, Charlie's Angels, the intro to Charlie's Angels.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
I saw, one of them was flipping a person, but what I didn't get at that age was that they all left the police force to become PIs.
Right.
And so, I glossed over that. I looked at them when they were in the academy and I thought, I could do that. And I just started thinking about all of the things that I didn't want to do, and I didn't want to be caught up in an office. And I really considered game warden because I love the outdoors, love hiking and just being out in it and the animals. And then there was a little thing called biology that went along with that was like, maybe not. And so I focused more on going into the police force, and serendipity stepped in because I was working as a bookkeeper. I'm trying to think of what age I was, but we had this office where some deputies would come in because we had clean bathrooms, we had hot coffee, and we had 2 relatively young women, there, and they'd come and they'd talk to us, and I went on a couple ride-alongs because I thought, again, I could do this. And so I called up Santa Barbara and inquired about that. And because I knew I didn't want to be a deputy, I didn't want to spend time in the jail. Again, it's that indoor thing. I wanted to be outdoor. And it was like, well, coincidentally enough, we're having an orientation tonight. Can you make it? And so, the rest was history.
So when you walked in for your orientation, did you do your Charlie's Angels pose and
No, but there may, in fact, I can't confirm it, but there may be a photograph of 3 officers doing that.
Okay, well, I'm going to find it. I now know a lot of PIs, so I'm going to put them on. All right, so you became a cop. So was that in California?
It was, yes. I've worked in 2 jurisdictions, 2 different states. It started in California. And so I worked for Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And I was there for 14 years.
Now, when being a police officer can mean a lot of different things. So talk to me, like, functionally, did you drive in a car? Were you in the station? Like, what was your?
I was a patrol officer. I started off as a patrol officer. And then in the course of those years, I worked patrol. I had an ancillary assignment as a hostage negotiator. I became a field training officer. I did the community relations. And the way they structured it in Santa Barbara is that you could become these, they call them P2s. It was just a level. And you could be in that specialty position for up to 4 years. You could leave it earlier. It was a pay bump. And then you'd have to rotate back into patrol before you could test for something else. So, but when I was the community relations officer, we did the Citizens Police Academy.
Well, I want to talk about that.
Okay. But
you're jumping ahead of all my good questions.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's go back. So you're in a car. I mean, was it mostly, again, every area has its own kind of flavor to it. Was it mostly just, speeding tickets and that kind of thing? Or was it, patrolling the neighborhoods, domestic cases, crime?
We had a lot of gang activity there. Santa Barbara, it's known as the American Riviera, and it is a beautiful place. And there are some places there that, are multi-million-dollar mansions, but the haves and the have-nots are very, very close together. And so that creates some tension. And then there's also some turf gangs there, East Side versus West Side, and they would routinely mix it up. And then every now and again, because Santa Barbara was so nice, we would have some of the bigger LA gangs come up for the weekend because everybody likes to vacation. And so they would show our local gang members how it's really done, and that sort of thing. So depending on the shift, I liked working nights.
Really? Why is that?
It was more active. It kept you busy. You had more in-progress calls than paper calls. Day shift was, cleaning up all of the things that night shift couldn't get to a lot of times.
So I want to ask you, so just going back for a second, so you mentioned, the gang. So I don't know if you're watching, but I've been fascinated. I've been watching this. Have you seen the show Snowfall? Have you seen this?
I have not, no.
Oh, it's great. It's all about the merging of, the crack cocaine epidemic that exploded when, Reagan was trying to fund the Contras, and how the two were intertwined. And, it really basically started in LA. But in the 80s, which is right around when you were in uniform, did you get the overflow from the crack cocaine epidemic down into where you were policing?
Absolutely. I don't think any place in California escaped that, whether it was an urban or a rural area. It's like the rural areas now with, all of the meth or the opioids issues that they're dealing with. It was the cocaine and crack that was really taking things over there. And, whenever you have that, you have money issues that go along with it. And then you have addiction issues that follow that. And so, Santa Barbara actually had a lot of resources. And so we would have people who would come because of those resources. And then sadly, not all of them proceeded to use the resources, or they did for a while, and then addiction pulled them back, out. And so,
so I guess more I'm trying to get at is, so you're an officer, you're doing your duty. I mean, did you have to get involved in active, you had to make, drug arrests or deal with the outflow of, someone's high on crack? I mean, that's no joke. I mean, they're like, human zombies out here doing pretty nasty things, violence and, theft and all sorts of other things. Did you have to get involved in that, or was that more on the periphery?
No, that was something that that was fairly frequent. It's pervasive. It was pervasive then, it's pervasive now.
Yeah.
It's just named something different.
So talk to me a little bit about the training that you did with the FBI Academy. Talk to me about that a little bit.
That occurred later when I was working in Colorado.
Okay. All right. So then I don't want to jump ahead yet. So you're in California, you're doing your thing, and then, so I don't know which one came first. So what came first, the FBI training or when you became a hostage negotiator, or were they tied together? What's the
hostage negotiation?
All right. So, all right. I want to hear about this, because being a hostage negotiator, this is not like saying, I'll take a desk job and move some things around. I mean, this is pretty intense. This is a pretty serious specialization. So how did that happen? And how do you decide, with this this is about as tense of a situation that I could possibly face. Give me some of that.
You remember when I was saying how I could talk to people
Yeah.
and flip between things? That actually became a strength when you have to test for it. You have to, it's a competitive process to be selected for the team. And really it's all about communication. At that point, you know, you are not doing a hands-on with the person. If anybody's going to go hands-on, it's going to be the inner perimeter. If there's a SWAT team there, which most likely there will be, unless it unfolds so quickly that patrol is dealing with it. But so it really comes down to how quickly can you build a rapport with this person?
Right.
You know, how quickly can you make them feel comfortable enough to trust you? How quickly can you convince them that, hey, I'm here so you don't get hurt? Because, you know, I'm a police officer. There's police officers outside. You're fine. I'm going to ensure that. Can you tell me whether or not everything's okay in there?
Right.
And so once you build that trust and once you listen to them, because sometimes it's just they want to air their grievance,
right,
whatever that happens to be. Sometimes they get in over their head and panic.
Sure.
You know, so by being a voice of reason to tell them, you know, how we can solve this together, then that's how you make strides. And so it was something that I found I really enjoyed, which is a strange thing to think about, but it was something that I was good at. And it was something that then I later, the tactical communications, I became an instructor. I taught at the academy. And it was just, it was fulfilling because if I could help someone get out of that kind of a jam without anybody getting hurt, it was a successful night.
So let me ask you, so Chris Voss, the author of Never Split the Difference, is one of the most prominently known hostage negotiators in America. Did you ever cross paths with Chris?
I did not. No.
Do you know, I mean, do you know him or no?
I know of him. You know, I think he came onto the scene a little bit later.
Okay,
when I got my initial training.
I saw him speak actually at an event in New York a couple of years ago. I bought his book, read the book, listened to it, and I wish that I really would stick with it and really like implement what he says. I mean, his tactic was, you know, it's right there in the titles, like never split the difference. You know, basically, we're not going to meet in the middle. Ultimately, his goal was to get the hostage taker is to get them to sort of, you know, relent ultimately of their own volition, right? To get to the point where he wanted them to get to the point where they wanted it out safely, like that.
Absolutely.
Right. We're not meeting in the middle. We're not meeting halfway. Ultimately, my goal is to get you all the way where I mean, and this is talking about, you know, kidnapped victims in Nicaragua and all across the world. I'm sure that's not exactly what it was for you, but let me ask you this. What's one of the toughest negotiations you had to handle?
You know, every negotiator has one incident that really sticks out for them. And the one that really continues to haunt me to this day is one that I was a secondary on. So I was the one listening to the primary negotiator, and my job would be to catch anything that person missed and pass them a note and say, hey, do this, do that, sort of thing. And we had this house surrounded. It was a person who had taken a hostage and barricaded themselves. And the person we called in.
Now, was this person who called in, was he alone or with someone else? Or what was the situation?
No, you know, I don't want to go too much into the scenario because, you know, even though I can reference it, I would never want somebody to listen to that and go, that was my sister.
Right,
you
right.
know,
Fair
sort
enough.
of thing.
Okay.
But it was such that a single person with a grudge from 5 years beforehand came in and took this woman hostage, and we got the SWAT team around
So
as
this
soon as
was, so just for the setting, so this was a single family home, a
it was a
residence,
single family home,
right?
and one of the people that was another person that was in the house escaped and called the police. That's how we were notified that, now
So I'm
this,
sorry, just for context, was this day, was it night, what time of year
it
was
was
it?
night.
Night,
Yeah.
nighttime. Okay, this is in
Yep.
California, correct?
In California and Santa Barbara,
Okay.
where, a lot of people think crime doesn't happen.
Right.
And so, it's in a neighborhood where fortunately our guys could maneuver, set up the perimeter.
Right.
They quickly established that. We knew that he was still in the home with his hostage. And so as soon as everybody was in place, we actually put the call in. And the call went to a voice machine. At that point, it was one of those machines where you could hear it throughout the house, which
The
meant that
answering
the
machine, that
perimeter.
beep,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly. So the SWAT guys outside, radioed us. Yeah, it went through. We could hear it. But unfortunately, this was a person who was mentally disturbed, and that put his end game into play. And he ended up killing the hostage and himself all at one time.
Oh my
And so my absolute worst negotiation was one where the guy never picked up.
Had a bad
And
outcome.
and the reason why it haunts me is here we had 25, 30 people
Right.
dedicated to saving this one life, and we never got the opportunity. And we always do a debrief afterwards. And when the shot went off inside, the SWAT team breached the home and went in, and
And did you make the arrest of the assailant?
he killed himself at the same time. He took
Oh,
them both out with one shotgun blast.
oh, jeez.
And so the SWAT guys got in before the last breath was taken, but
Right.
neither one of them was capable of being saved.
Good Lord.
And so you have this debrief, and we were close enough, the hostage negotiators were close enough where we heard that gunshot, and we just, the primary and I just looked at each other, and we knew we were done. And
In
it
that
was,
moment, I mean, like this, like you're just like, you just swallow your heart right then, and just like,
I wrote about this one time, and this gave me the motivation to really want to be honest as a police writer,
right.
and to honor the people who have become victims of crime,
Right.
and to never make light of someone else's pain. And so it was really a pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah.
And like I said, even today, I'll occasionally have that nightmare of,
Right.
you don't get away from it.
Right.
And,
How it's probably like infused in your DNA at this point. Like how,
right. And it's like the love that got away, you will always remember that person.
right.
Well, this is just a much more traumatic thing to want to get away from.
Right. So you mentioned that there being, 25, 30 people all in kind of involved. And it was actually part of my next question. During the negotiation, there can be dozens of people involved. So
Absolutely.
Right. So how much of managing that process is making sure that the rest of the team is giving you the space and the coordination to actually negotiate, and how much of it is establishing the rapport, hopefully, with the hostage taker?
Well, everybody in the negotiating room, whether it was a command post, whether you were in a mobile command post, whether we've commandeered houses before,
Right.
just to be within a proximity. Everybody has a duty. you have your primary negotiator, your secondary, you have a scribe, you have somebody doing the background checks and investigative work on it. You've got a supervisor who's talking to staff. You have a liaison who's dealing with the SWAT team, and so there's a tremendous amount of communication between team members, between the SWAT and negotiators, because now you have that dynamic tension. You have SWAT team who's looking at the light falling and things like that, and maybe it's better for them to move while it's light. But you have the negotiator saying, no, we've just made a breakthrough, let's keep going here. And so we have people on both teams that are now putting forward their arguments, and it's up to some member of the command structure to make the call.
Right. So within the negotiation, you need someone on your team to negotiate between all the active parties on the team, right? Because they all have their own points of view, and of course, humans being who we are, we all think we're right, but only one person gets to be right.
Well, one person gets to make the call.
Well, right, that's what I mean.
And that's the other thing, where even though you have only one person initially who's dealing with the person, so that you have some distance between, if they do come up with a demand, that you can create some time issues. But you have people who are listening to the call on a different speaker, a room away, and they might catch something else. Or sometimes you have a psychologist in the room who's listening to what's being said, particularly if there's some sort of delusions of grandeur, or something that is beyond the typical training of a police officer, one who's a negotiator.
I mean, even when I was reading Chris's book, and he went through various scenarios, and what seemed to come up a lot is the fact that the hostage taker, when you arrive, you rarely ever know what the true motivation is, or why they're doing what they're doing. And it may take a while. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't get there, but it's not necessarily some great criminal mastermind who has this plan. They've got personal things going on, and it's sort of numerous factors led them to this point of distress. And this is kind of my next question, and then we're going to move on. So for the most part, in cases where there's a hostage situation, for the most part, is the hostage taker, do you think they're really looking for and even believing that there isn't actually a legitimate way out where they kind of get what they want and they leave? Or do you think they go into it thinking, this is pretty much it? It's either I'm going to jail, or it's like suicide by cop.
Well, when you mention the suicide by cop, there are plenty of people who feel like, well, I'm not giving up. It would be too great of a price for me to pay. I know, even though I haven't killed somebody, I know I'm going to jail. I don't want to do that. I think once they take a breath, and once they have a chance to realize the position that they're in, if they're in a mindset that can, function and process that information, I think most people get to the point where it's like, all right, I've got two choices. I can go with the program, or this is going to end with
real bad.
Yeah, real bad. Time is a negotiator's friend.
Right.
The more time that passes, the likelier there is to a good resolution.
They're going to get fatigued. They're going to get hungry. They're going to start losing their resolve. Reality is going to start shaking in. Their adrenaline's going to fade.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. All of that comes into play. It's the people who are making those snap decisions, listening to their limbic system instead of their rational system. It's that lizard brain going on.
That's right.
And they're just in reaction mode.
Okay, I could talk literally about this for hours. One teeny question, and I have to move on. So have you been in hostage situations where you're getting close. You're making the rapport. They're starting to lower their defenses. You're starting to learn a little bit more about them. You're starting to realize, oh, they're not pissed off about this or scared about that. It's probably more about this. They had a fight with their girlfriend. They lost their job. There's something, and you're getting there, and then something happens. Someone makes a misstep. Someone yells. Someone forces something, and you blows all the progress that you made.
Yes.
Oh,
you know, I would love to say no, but it doesn't have to be catastrophic.
Right.
You know, it could be something like, you know, I told you I didn't want to see any cops, and there's one, I can see them right there.
Right.
And then, you know, your liaison is calling the SWAT team on the radio and saying, hey, the person in this position, can you have them step behind that tree, or, you know, what have you? And you start over.
Right.
You know, that's the beauty of, you know, the negotiators. When one of us gets tired, another person can step in.
Right.
You know, you try not to, you try to keep that consistency going.
But even still, even you can only physically like be focused for so long. Even your own resolve starts to fade.
It's amazing how long you can go.
Right.
And you're not on the phone constantly.
True. And I guess your adrenaline's got to be pumping like crazy.
It does. And, you know, you're in there, and you can certainly, you know, you get these little cat naps if it goes on for a very, very long time, because someone else is doing the intel gathering and things like that. And then, you know, the phone rings, you get a quick, you know.
All right. Honestly, I swear I should have booked you for 5 hours. It's my own problem. I am too curious. All right. So I got to move along.
Okay. We're
going to circle back. So real quick. So along the way, you coordinated the Citizens Police Academy. So first, what is that exactly? And then what famous crime author did you meet through that organization?
So the Citizens Police Academy was a 10-week program. It met every Wednesday night, and for 3 hours. And members of the community could participate. They applied for it, and typically we had about 30 people in a class. And we would demystify what cops did on a regular basis. And we also had some really fun things that they were able to do. We took them to the range. We let them shoot under our range master's tutelage. We showed them what the hostage negotiation equipment was. We had a bomb guy come in. We would do a canine demonstration. They would learn about traffic accidents and why we do. And so we had all of these different components that they would be able to learn about. And that's where I happened to meet Sue Grafton, who lived out in Montecito, and she was one of our Citizens Police students. And she was very quiet, but man, when she spoke, she had this really wry, dry wit. And which, you know, if you read any of her books, you know,
they're you can't see them. They're right up on the shelf.
Yep. So it was a blast. It was a lot of fun to coordinate. And
did you keep in touch with her after that?
You know, I didn't. She split her time. She did before she took that. She had a couple of officers in Santa Barbara, a couple sergeants and stuff that she had used for you know, to run scenarios by. And, so she had her contacts there, but you know, it was for a person who wasn't contemplating becoming a writer at that time. It was like, oh, wow, she's pretty cool.
Right on. Okay, so it brings me to my next question. We're going to have to come back to some stuff later. So you eventually shifted into crime fiction, and we'll have to talk a little bit, some of that towards the end. So here's something I want to ask. You mentioned it a little bit briefly about, you know, wanting to be, as a writer now, being sensitive to the pain that can come along and the grief that comes along with any kind of police related situation. So how much of your law enforcement career do you bring into your crime fiction, and how important it is to you that you really stick to it? Or is there kind of gray area where you say, look, I know what is real and what would actually happen. But let's face it, I'm writing a book. I need to sort of embellish for dramatic purposes. Or do you say, nope, you know what? If it wouldn't really happen, I'm not doing it.
It was a tough transition to go from writing police reports to writing fiction.
Mhm.
And I thought it would be really easy. I mean, I became a professional writer the day I held up my hand and swore to uphold the public trust. Because they hand you a pen. They lure you in with the fast car and the sirens and everything. They hand you a pen.
What they really should do is say, welcome to paperwork.
Right, exactly. And so it was a tough transition, and I could not write a police procedural right away. I tried. I have 2 manuscripts that are in my sock drawer.
Right.
That will never see the light of day, and that's a good thing because
is it a little bit of you had to sort of unlearn what you learned so then you could relearn it again in a different way?
Yes, exactly. Because by gosh, by the time I was really seriously writing, I had 22 years of law enforcement under my belt. And that's a lot of training and information that was, knocking around the noggin here. And by goodness, if I knew it, you were going to know it too. And that's not an exciting book. So it took writing stories about an amateur sleuth before I learned how to dribble in the necessary law enforcement without overwhelming the narrative with it.
Right, because an amateur sleuth is not going to know everything that a police officer would know or would be held to. So I guess it sort of maybe took the shackles off, so to speak.
It did.
So
And
you took off your own handcuffs, I guess.
Absolutely. And it worked. And during that time I was studying craft. I was reading people that I admired. I was becoming active in some of the associations and groups, Sisters in Crime, which is a writing organization, Mystery Writers of America, that sort of thing. And there were all of these people who were very generous with their time and advice.
Right.
And so I finally realized how to structure a narrative, a fictional narrative, which is different than, a police report. And so
I would think, yes.
Yeah, very definitely. And after I got a couple of them under my belt, that's when I turned back to.
Okay, so ultimately, are you more interested in telling a good mystery or focusing on character?
Oh gosh, they go part and parcel.
Yes.
It's not one over the other.
Okay, fair enough. It's funny. I ask this question almost every time, and I get most the writers say character.
Well, you have to be true to a character,
right?
And you asked whether or not I would put something in that wouldn't happen. Of course, I mean every writer does,
right?
But that doesn't mean that you can't be true to the meaning of it. It's like I will never recreate. I don't write true crime. I will never recreate someone else's heartache.
Right.
But all of that has really
it's got to inform you.
It does. It informs me, and I'm honest to what I've observed. Being a cop was a masterclass in writing.
Sure, right.
Masterclass in humanity.
Got to pay attention to everything.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, that was great. But now it's time for a special segment where we spin the wheel. On the wheel are 7 possible categories. Wherever it lands is what you get. And the categories are Play It Again, Sam, Stranger in a Strange Land, Cold Case, Music Lover, Quantum Leap, Desperately Dreaming Dexter, and Kick 'Em in the Junk. All right. You ready? Here we go.
But then what do I do with that?
What are you going to say? Let's see where it lands. Wherever it lands is what you get. All right, we got a big spin here. All right. And you got Quantum Leap. God, that one comes up a lot. Okay, so you volunteered to step into the Quantum Leap Accelerator, only you get to pick where you go and when with your own lifetime, past, present, or future. What's your destination?
The moment I heard that I was selected for the FBI National Academy.
Okay, very cool. Why?
Because it was the realization of a dream. It was something that I was familiar with. To give some background on it, that the FBI National Academy is an executive leadership program. It requires the person to go through a background check through the FBI and then go to Quantico, where they stay for 10 weeks. And it's a global program, and it's meant to foster communication amongst agencies of all levels. You have to be either a lieutenant or above to go. And so I had learned about this in Santa Barbara. I didn't get selected for it until I became a cop in Colorado. And it was a dream.
All right, great. And we're going to come back to that later. It's the one thing I didn't really get to, but we will, I promise. Okay, so now our next section on the show is pick your poison. You have 3 options, okay? A, B, or C. I'm not telling you what they are. Just A, B, or just pick one at random. A, B, or C.
B.
B.
The middle
B,
child.
Oh, B. Okay. All right. Well, this is one of our newer questions on the show. All right. And this one is all or nothing or steady as she goes. Now, there's a little bit of a longer lead into this one, so you just got to bear with me on the setup. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to give you 2 options that will define the rest of your writing career. You can only pick one. And here are the options. Option 1, your next book is an international bestseller. You win every award there is. You make tons of money. Your book gets made into a movie that wins the Academy Award for Best Picture. You can ride the success forever. You will always be that writer. However, every book you write after that one, and I'm talking every single one, is an absolute dumpster fire. Critically trashed and a commercial zero. You are called a washed up hack who can no longer even string together 2 cohesive sentences. Okay. Or choice number 2, you keep writing as you've been doing. You are generally well respected. Whatever you're doing financially you'll never do better than that. And that's how it goes. So if we're up to you, given these 2 choices, which career path do you pick? All or nothing or steady as she goes?
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
The steady as she goes, I've been incrementally improving on each one. So do I get to...
That's not the question.
Oh, man.
That's not the question.
Shit. You know what? I'm gonna go with the first. If I want to hit those milestones. So if I only get one chance at it, that's what I'm going to do.
All right, right on. Go big or go home. All right.
Go big or go home.
All right, I love it. Okay, great. All right, so here next, this is our newest section on the show.
You're killing me, Russ.
I know. I told you to watch out. I'm going to give you some truth serum. You ready? I'm going to ask you 10 questions. You got to answer quickly. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. Favorite flavor ice cream?
Chocolate.
Pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
No.
Okay. Bucket list destination anywhere in the world?
Lindisfarne Island.
Where's that?
It's off the coast of England. It was a monastery. I'm a medieval history major.
Okay. All right. There you go. All right. Scariest movie you ever saw?
Jaws.
Oh, that was a good one. Yeah, it's actually funny, not funny story. Some years ago, for the 25th anniversary, I got to see Jaws on the big screen at Radio City Music Hall with Peter Benchley set up the movie. It's great.
Oh.
Yes, it was the first time and it's the only time I got to see it on the big screen because I was too young when it came out. All right. So if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Invisibility.
Okay. Do you play any musical instruments?
Badly.
Okay. All right. If you could play one well, what would it be?
The harp.
The harp. Oh, okay. You can only have one. Wealth or friendship?
Friendship.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
You can see a live performance, sports, music, theater, whatever, any seat, any venue. What's your choice?
Hamilton.
Okay, very good. Okay, and finally, most impactful where were you then moment?
The moment I walked across this police state or this stage to be sworn in as a police officer.
Okay, all right, that was great. All right, so now we're going to take some questions from the audience and then we're going to wrap up. All right, so here's one. What mistakes do the TV shows or movies make when showing a hostage situation?
They trade alcohol. They trade weapons. I've seen both of those. Both of them drive me absolutely over the edge, because you are certainly not going to introduce alcohol or any sort of drugs to an already volatile situation.
Right. Okay. So I want to go back a little bit, and you touched on your own a little bit about the FBI training program. So you wound up going to Colorado. Where in Colorado were you, by the way?
I was down in Durango, the southwest corner.
Southwest corner. Oh, interesting. Okay, so because I actually some time ago I actually lived out in Tempe, Arizona, so I never quite made it all the way over to the border. Went to the Grand Canyon a couple of times, but so you're in Colorado, and then you go through this FBI training program. What was your biggest takeaways from that?
Media training, actually. Although sometimes I still get tongue-tied, but actually, no, I'm gonna revise that. It was the camaraderie. I made some friends there that were from different agencies that I'm still friends with, even though I graduated that in 2006. We still keep in contact with each other. We visit each other.
Right.
And so it's proof that the goal of the program works, because it's to create that inner cooperation between agencies. And when I was still working, I had this resource where it was people who had graduated, and if I needed something from a certain jurisdiction, I could go down the list, find somebody,
Right.
and call them and say, hey, I was, NA session such and such. I see that you were here. We're going to send some officers down there because, one of the people that we're looking for is in your jurisdiction. Can we get some help? And it opened it up.
Right. So I got a question. So when it comes to the FBI, most people obviously never join the FBI, don't really know what overwhelmingly people know or think they know. It's whatever they see on TV or the movies and whatever happens to be in the news. I've spoken to many folks in law enforcement and people in the military, and who've had a friend who was in the EOD, and it seems that especially with FBI, CIA, anything with those big, the three-letter agencies, it's either, wow, they are just the coolest. They know things and they do stuff and they get to go places, and it's like pretty badass, or they're a bunch of corrupt morons who are only serving the government inside the government inside the government. And they can't be trusted, and all they do is fight and they steal things. Yeah, are both of those things true? Is one more true than another? Like, what's the real story there?
The biggest takeaway on those is that they have bigger budgets, which give them better toys. Honestly,
Right.
Law enforcement is like any other slice of the community. You have mostly really good people trying to do a really good job. You have some people who never should have made it into the agency.
Right.
But I think that's the same. You have doctors. There's some doctors that are great. There's some doctors I'd never want to go to.
Right.
And so it's teachers, any slice of humanity, you have that bell curve of people. And so I think it's all true. I would say that law enforcement in general is a lot more boring than a lot of people make it out for. Because everything has to be documented. And there are agencies who do nothing but push paper because they're going after white crime, the white collar crime.
Right.
And so it's all a little true.
Right. Okay, that was great. So I'm going to share my screen. I've got something to share with the folks at home, so bear with me for a minute. Hopefully I'm going to do this right. I usually screw it up, but hopefully I won't. Okay. All right. So what do we got here?
That's my latest book, actually, Mercy Creek. It's, as you can see on there, it's a Joe Wyatt mystery. Joe Wyatt is a female detective in Colorado, and she's the kind of person that when you read the books at the end, I hope she's who you would want to see land on your doorstep if you found yourself in over your head on something. But this particular,
is she you?
no.
Okay.
You know, people ask me that all the time. I just got that actually the other day. And there's a part of me in every single character, of course. But I have this tendency of writing about characters who are smarter than I am, or have specialized knowledge that I don't have. So I do a lot of research, but I would like to say that you know, she's got grit, she's got determination. She really does believe in upholding the public trust. So in that way, she is like me, but she's both smarter and occasionally stupider than I ever was. So
Right.
that's what makes a good character.
Right. So what's the setup on this one?
Setup is a missing child, and because it takes place in a small jurisdiction, everybody tends to know each other, and because of that, you know, sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. And in this particular thing, she unearths a trove of secrets and half-lies that paint a different picture of the missing child's parents. And these are two people that she's known since high school. So what you start out with and what you end up with are two very different things.
All right, fair enough. All right, thanks, Mickey. That sounds great. Sounds like a great book, and I know I'm going to be picking it up for myself. All right,
Thank
as
you.
for me, if you're up for a little twist with your private eye fiction, I'll encourage you to check out my sci-fi noir, Fractured Lives, the second book in my ongoing series featuring hard-boiled intergalactic private eye Angela Hardwick, part Blade Runner, part Doctor Who, part Philip Marlowe. As the core mystery, Hardwick and her protege Eric Whistler are hired to find out if a galaxy-designed savant is suffering from a nervous breakdown or is the victim of the urban legend known as the Scarlet Raj, who may or may not have nefarious plans of her own. But on a more personal note, Hardwick is struggling to decide how, or if, she can be an effective private eye and be a good mother to her 5-year-old son, Owen. It's a grueling process for Hardwick, who may have some tough choices to make. Fractured Lives is available on Amazon and published by Crazy 8 Press. And if you want a signed copy, you can order one directly from me. Okay, so that's our show. I want to thank Mickey Browning for stopping by. This was an excellent hour. And I want to thank everyone who's watching at home. I'm your host, Russ Colchamiro. And as always, I'll see you all next week. All right.
Russ, thank you so very,
all right.
very
Thanks,
much.
Mickey. Fantastic. All right. Thanks a lot, folks. All right. Bye now. Okay. And where are we? Sorry.